This is Sherman Clump's house. His fridge is full of diet products sponsored by the same fitness guru shouting nonsensical motivation on TV. None of that seems to be working much, as we can see by the size of his clothes. Let's have a look at his professional life then. Before he even gets to Wellman College, Professor Clump is already in trouble. Apparently, there's been a rebellion among his test subjects, and now the hamsters are enjoying their newly found freedom by spreading terror around campus. At the lab, his assistant Jason is horrified to inform that the cages were all open. Sherman is sure that he locked them yesterday. Retracing his steps, he sees that his prominent behind moves the switch when he turns around. The only hamster that didn't escape was Shelly, and we can see why. She's too big to move. Jason says there's also some kind of mistake in the test results. Shelly seems to have lost too much weight in a short span of time. Sherman says it's no mistake. The readings show a transformation in her molecular structure. That means their formula is working, and her DNA is getting a makeover. Jason suggests upping the dosage, but the professor refuses to put his poster girl in danger. Summoned by Dean Richmond, Professor Clump is informed that the science department should no longer count on the generous donations by Louise Vudovic because he choked on a hamster and had to be rushed to the hospital. From Richmond's hysterical rant, we learn this is not the first time Clump is involved in an incident that scares away wealthy alumni. Their last hope is science fan Harlan Hartley and the $10 million he plans to donate to Wellman. Sherman must make sure it happens if he wants to keep his job. It surely doesn't help our hero that he struggles to part ways with the chair. And neither does the unexpected visitor in the dean's coffee. In class, the students can't help but laugh when they see the mile-long formula getting erased by Clump's belly. As the bell marks the end of that crappy morning, he finds some relief in the candy stash he keeps in his drawer. But maybe his luck is about to turn. A pretty lady named Carla Purdy comes to see him. She's a grad student teaching chemistry next door, and she has always been a huge fan of his work. Totally caught off guard, Sherman begins to mix up the words nervously, but his young fan is too sweet to notice. Having dinner with his family that night, Sherman feels deeply embarrassed. They might have similar shapes and eating habits, but their behavior is nothing alike, and their table manners are appalling. Mr. Clump is so proud of his own digestive talents that he doesn't care if he bothers other people. When he notices his son is eating less tonight, he makes sure to burst his bubble, saying he'll never be able to lose any weight and it's pointless to try. At the doorway, he has a brief talk with his mother. Fortunately, she is much kinder than her husband and tells him not to mind that old ogre. Pointing out how well-liked Sherman is by his friends and students, she tells him not to forget how beautiful he is as a person. Inner beauty might not be what he's looking for now, but that does give him a little confidence boost, or at least enough to try his luck with Carla, the grad student. Trying not to sound creepy, he explains that he got her address from the faculty directory. Then he begins a clumsy sentence that never seems to finish, but Carla mercifully interrupts. She says that if that train wreck that's coming out of his mouth is, by any chance, an attempt to ask her out, then the answer is yes. Clump can barely believe his ears. He has a date with a hot girl this Friday night. At home, he celebrates that awesome win and then falls asleep on the couch. But then he has a terrible nightmare. It starts out as a romantic dream at the beach, until they lay down and Carla succumbs under his weight, disappearing into the sand. He wakes up, startled by the TV. Lance Perkins' primetime torture is on. Now Sherman has an extra layer of motivation to join a fitness cult. For the next few days, he tries just about everything to get in shape, totally ignoring the fact that a shape like his won't change in such a short period. Maybe love is blind to the mirror as well. Anyway, Friday night finds him as round as ever, but it doesn't matter. Just like Mama Clump, Carla is a nice woman who can see past the obesity. They go to a club called The Scream and actually have lots of fun together. Sadly, that changes drastically during the show. The performer is a guy named Reggie, and his specialty is insult comedy. After mocking a bunch of people in the audience for their looks, he specifically targets our man and drowns him in very cruel jokes. Sherman has to hold back tears while everyone else is laughing. What started out as the best night of his life is now completely ruined. He drops Carla off, and she tries to cheer him up with more of the inner beauty talk. He thanks her for the effort, but we can see he's too hurt to listen to her. The diet goes out the window the moment he gets home, ready to give up on all that. After stuffing his face with all kinds of junk, he falls asleep and has another nightmare. This one is much more catastrophic. It begins with him having a heart attack, and then the doctors are shocked to see him get bigger and bigger, all the way to Godzilla proportions. Then he tries to walk, and it causes complete destruction to the city. Once again, he wakes up determined to change his life. But this time he's way past the cardio, the shakes, and all that stuff. He decides to use the serum he's been developing at the lab. If Shelley will be turning rodent head soon, why can't he be a success with the ladies? The human ones, hopefully. He prepares the serum in the middle of the night, after some calculations to adjust the dosage. Shelley looks preoccupied to see him injecting himself. His vitals begin to go wild as his DNA is rebuilt, and he seems to have some kind of seizure before passing out. Then we see the figure on the computer screen dramatically change in a few seconds, and the same transformation is happening to the actual body. His clothes look like a deflated balloon now. In the morning, the professor can't even recognize his own image in the mirror. A zillion pounds lighter. He now looks like a completely different person. He even gets a little emotional to see little Sherman again, after so many years. But now he needs to revamp his wardrobe too, so he hits the mall right away, choosing exactly the kind of clothes he could never dream of wearing before. No one is saying it's a good choice, but still, it's an accomplishment. After the shopping spree, he goes back to the gym just to enjoy the trampoline now that there's nothing flapping violently up and down. At lunch, we can see his appetite hasn't changed, and he couldn't care less. In fact, he keeps telling everyone that he's a thin man, which surely must be annoying. On Monday, Carla comes into the lab asking for Sherman Clump. He is standing right in front of her, but she can't even tell it's the same person. Instead of sharing the scientific breakthrough with her, Sherman decides to leave that fat life behind, so he can embark on this relationship as a new man. So he assumes a new identity, at least as far as she's concerned. When the guard comes to ask about the vandalized lab, he doesn't recognize him either and calls him Buddy. Our hero takes that cue, and God knows why, decides that his new name is Buddy Love. As soon as Officer Dag is gone, he asks Carla out on a date. She is clearly charmed by this sexy scientist, but she hesitates for a moment, thinking of Sherman and what they had going on. That's when something weird happens to Buddy Love. His voice begins to oscillate, and his fingers grow fat again. Quickly kicking Carla out of the lab, Sherman realizes that he's Dr. Jekyll and Buddy Love is Mr. Hyde. The transformation is not permanent. In a few seconds, he's back into old Sherman's body. Desperate to sort out the situation, he pops into class just to tell his students to review what they studied before. He doesn't even notice the dean is infiltrated in one of the back rows, frowning at his lack of academic commitment. On his way to the lab, he meets Carla. She apologizes for the other night. It was her idea to go to that stupid club. Then she also mentions their mutual friend, Buddy Love. As tactfully as she can, Carla says she is considering going on a date with the new dude. Sherman is not hurt by that at all. He says Buddy is a wonderful young man, and she deserves to be happy. So here is the mysterious Mr. Love arriving at the Scream in a flashy sports car and dressed like a hotshot. After waiting there alone for 1 hour, Carla is not impressed by the entrance. In fact, she says she's leaving. But he's not about to let her do that after everything he's been through. So he falls to his knees and begins to vomit every excuse he's ever heard from a late student. Embarrassed to death, Carla agrees to stay. Dinner with Buddy Love turns out to be a bizarre experience. His order could feed an entire football team twice. Carla says he's lucky to be so thin, but he replies that luck has nothing to do with it. And then tonight's performer is introduced, and guess what? It's Reggie again. Not having grown a conscience since last week, the comedian proceeds to offend audience members one by one. Except that this time, he has a worthy opponent. Sherman Clump's grudge is now combined with Buddy Love's confidence. That's not good for Reggie. At first, Carla thinks Buddy might be a total jerk because he's laughing too hard at Reggie's cheap and rude jokes. But it soon becomes clear that he's hijacking the show. At the first opportunity, he starts making fun of Reggie's teeth. The audience loves it because his jokes are much funnier. The comedian grows angrier at every punchline, until the whole thing escalates into a yo mama duel. Now Reggie does not stand a chance. Whatever fat mom joke you can think of, Sherman has heard them all, probably not just once. So Buddy manages to finish the jokes Reggie has barely started and then fires a bunch of better ones like an insult machine. Reggie is such a sore loser that he now wants to fight him for ruining the show. Buddy doesn't back down on that either. It's with great pleasure that he slams that empty head into the piano before accepting a round of very enthusiastic applause. When he gets back to his table, Carla is so impressed that their earlier fight is totally forgotten, and she kisses him. Our man is the king of the world now, and that usually means the iceberg is coming for you. Buddy is no exception, sadly. Right after the kiss, Sherman's lower lip invades Buddy's face. He explains the phenomenon as some kind of allergy and then leaves in a hurry, forgetting his credit card behind. Coincidentally, Jason is also at the screen. When he sees the card with the professor's name, he concludes it was stolen and runs after Buddy to confront him. Jason makes his way into the car just in time to witness something that will put in therapy for life. The metamorphosis is in progress and Buddy is now halfway to Sherman. The poor student has a hard time believing his own eyes, and when the transformation is over, they both have a hard time explaining to the emergency responders how a man like Sherman got inside a car like that. To make things worse, it turns out that the sports car was paid for with the faculty account. And as we know, Dean Richmond has been waiting for him to make a tiny mistake, so he would never miss this huge screw-up. Holding the evidence over his head, Richmond explains what's going to happen next. He has set up a dinner with Harlan Hartley. Sherman is expected to convince that man to fund the development of the weight loss serum. At the lab, Jason has a few things to get off his chest. While he can understand Sherman's reasons for the reckless experimentation, he points out the unexpected side effects can be dangerous. Even the subject's personality can be altered by such an invasive procedure. He says Buddy Love was mean and acted like a bully. Even if Reggie had it coming, the person who crushed him last night was not the same kind-hearted professor loved by everyone on campus. Deeply shaken by Jason's words, Sherman decides to talk to Carla. It still doesn't occur to him that he could tell her the truth or something reasonably similar. Not sure how to address the existence of Buddy Love, he's just glad that she seems to have mixed feelings. And then he makes the colossal mistake to invite her for dinner with his family. You heard that right. The Clump family. Not surprisingly, the evening is a complete disaster. Everyone keeps asking Carla the most inappropriate questions, and Mr. Clump does his best to disgust her. Walking her home, Sherman apologizes on their behalf. She accepts the apology, but as the conversation leads back to Buddy Love, those feelings seem less mixed now. She wants to know if he's better from that allergic reaction and wonders if they'll get to have a second date. Any hope Sherman of being with her as himself is shattered now. On the next day, Jason is upset to see Buddy Love goofing around the lab. He tries to explain the anomaly in his testosterone levels and how that can make him lose control, not to mention behaving like an idiot. The repeated use of the serum also increases the chances of a hostile takeover, where Sherman would no longer be able to resurface and Buddy would be his permanent self. However, Jason fails to see his own point. He's not talking to Sherman anymore. Buddy Love is so different from the original person that he's selfish enough to trick Jason. He pretends to be convinced by his arguments only to lock him and leave. Then he takes Carla out for dinner in a hotel restaurant, hoping for an extended dessert. But that happens to be the same restaurant where Harlan Hartley is waiting for Sherman, and not too patiently. Recognizing Carla, Richmond asks about her missing colleague and explains the situation. As Buddy is supposed to be Sherman's lab partner, he would know enough about the weight loss serum to convince Hartley that the college deserves his money. Carla begs him to help save their department, and he agrees. Buddy puts on a show and manages to impress not only Hartley but several girls at the restaurant. Carla is upset about that, but what makes her furious is that he keeps saying awful things about Sherman and ends up getting all the credit for his work. In fact, Richmond offers Sherman's position at the college, and he takes it. Carla's opinion is irrelevant to him now that he has more options on the menu. Buddy has a very wild night, but in the morning, it's Sherman who wakes up. This time he can't remember what he's done as his slimmer self. Just like Jason predicted, the effects of the serum are growing exponentially, and they are actually becoming two different people. And only one of those two is currently employed, as Richmond is delighted to inform. At home, Sherman watches a video message from Buddy, callously pointing that his life is much better than the professor's. He tries to talk him into a permanent switch. That only makes Sherman more determined to end this foolish adventure. He calls Jason, and they go to the lab to destroy the serum. But as they still think alike in many cases, Buddy had prepared a failsafe for that and replaced Sherman's diet drink with the serum. As a result, Buddy shows up at the alumni gala that night, ready to demonstrate the effects of the serum to the audience. He has a huge surprise when his own arm attacks him. Sherman is fighting back from within, and he finally takes control again, to everyone's complete horror. He apologizes for his selfish misuse of the serum and promises to lose weight in more conventional ways in the future. Ashamed of his actions and thinking he has disappointed everyone, he tries to leave the ball. But Carla goes after him to say how brave he was to fight for what is right. She says she likes him for who he is and not the way he looks. Hartley is also impressed by the serum and agrees to support the science department. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 1996 movie, The Nutty Professor by Imagine Entertainment, starring Eddie Murphy and Jada Pinkett. So, what was the point of no return for this nutjob? Would you have done the same? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.